You're listening to the Better Men Podcast, a no deadbeat society project. www.wearebettermen.com. It is. I'm starting to love doing that. Sunday, December 10th, 2017. And you are listening to episode 003 of the We Are Better Men podcast, or sometimes known as the Better Men podcast. We're claiming both. We've got a great episode here for you. Steve and I have a brilliant discussion about a whole bunch of things, from, what we're doing on the back end of this podcast to father's rights and family litigation and that kind of thing. I talk about my hip hop career. We talk about what Steve's up to, how Steve broke his leg, broke his foot recently. And we talk about a couple other really cool things. So this is a good one. We're first going to jump into an interview with Mike Dorsey, who founded Black Family Apparel. Had a great chat with him recently, and let's just jump right into that.
Perfect timing, my man.
Perfect. All right, let's jump right into it then. Let's talk about Black Family Apparel, what it is, and why you started it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for asking. Black Family Apparel is my apparel company. It actually is the apparel arm to the movement that I started about 7 months ago called Black Fathers Now. But Black Family Apparel, in essence, is a clothing line for everybody, for kids, for dads, for moms, for married couples, and pretty much anybody. I mean, from birth, until we have things for you to wear and put on. The concept behind Black Family Apparel is bringing unique concepts and unique imagery to the world that help to celebrate the nuances of the Black family. And so what we tend to do is for the imagery component, we'll take an image that basically kind of busts a stereotype. So for instance, we have a line called the Yes Boys Read. And the Yes Boys Read line is basically focused on a little boy of color sitting on top of a basketball reading a book. It kind of busts the stereotypes because a lot of times people automatically assume that, black boys just play ball. This kind of shows black boys sitting on the ball but reading. And so that's just an example of some of the, the imagery that's exemplified with Black Family Apparel. But once again, it's about helping to just celebrate the nuances and celebrate the Black family itself.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's definitely, I've gone through it all and taken a good look. You guys are definitely doing great work, and it's a message I think that's really needed. What do you think in terms of like society and trends? Like, it's an unfortunate thing, but especially the pundits on the radio and such are, when they talk about black families and the fatherlessness issue and crime and that kind of thing. Do you think that it's trending like your messaging is helping move that needle so that that's not the crap they're talking about?
The thing is, this kind of dives into a deeper issue that a lot of people don't really want to jump into. But the thing is, when you really look at trends or you look at, statistics and all of that, a lot of times statistics are put out there with angles, right? Someone is trying to create a particular narrative, because if you really take a step back and look at it, the numbers across most cultural lines are pretty comparable. But when you just take one part or you look at one socioeconomic group of a particular demographic, then sometimes the numbers tend to skew in a way that aren't necessarily favorable. One of the things that I will say is this: if you look at any culture, if you look at any group, any race, any socioeconomic group, what you'll find is you have a wide array or basically you have a vast number of folks in a lot of different buckets, but it's all about what people tend to highlight. And a lot of times, if you don't take time to expose yourself to people outside of your world or outside of your particular culture or outside of your race or outside of your belief system, what you tend to do is formulate an opinion of them just based on what someone else tells you, because you've never experienced interactions with them yourself. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, I'm a black man and I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is in the southeastern part of the United States. And the experiences that I have growing up, are isolated to me. So therefore, if I don't take myself outside of my bubble and expose myself to people of different beliefs, from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different parts of the world, when we travel internationally, we try to dive into culture to understand people and understand them and understand their nuances so that we then don't fall into that same trap of stereotyping all of one person or all of one people and broad stroke them and say that everybody falls into this bucket. And I think truthfully, when it comes to the pundits and, the things that are put out there, a lot of times that's what ends up happening. You don't spend time with people who are different from yourself. So therefore, you take one example and make that example the total entirety of a people, which is not the truth, nor is it fair.
Yeah.
So did that explain it?
That explains it. I definitely agree with you. I think that that's when you 100% hit the mark. I mean, I know you're an intelligent guy because we've talked before, so I'm glad you we went down there. Last thing, we talked before, and you had mentioned you came up with this metaphor about music and kind of
yes.
how you target your audience, and I want to get that out of you because I really thought that was brilliant, and I want to make sure that's included. So maybe could you run through that again?
Yeah, no problem. The reason, because when you and I spoke before, a lot of times, I get questions about, why is it that you're focusing on Black family apparel, or why is it that, your movement is Black fathers now? Why not all fathers now, or why not, just family apparel, so to speak? And the thing is, when you're positioning something or when you're putting something out there, you want to be specific in your approach. Now, if I'm being specific in my approach or targeted in my approach, that does not mean that I'm not looking to benefit other people. So the analogy that I gave you before was when someone is making a rap album or a hip hop album, a lot of times the content that's being presented in that particular genre is geared towards maybe the urban demographic or people who would identify with the urban demographic. But if you step back and kind of pan out and look at the view of who purchases it and who listens to the music, a lot of people from all kinds of cultures and backgrounds listen to hip hop, even though the targeted message or the information or the theme of what's talked about is specifically targeted at the urban demographic. The same thing can be said for country music. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is not far from Nashville, which is basically country music capital of the world. And if you think about a lot of the lyrics and a lot of the themes and a lot of the content that's put out for country music, it's geared towards kind of the rural, country lifestyle, so to speak. And so they're not necessarily talking to the urban demographic, though people from all backgrounds might get something from country music. So when I think about Black family apparel and Black fathers now, yes, I'm speaking specifically to Black fathers. That does not mean other fathers and other people, because there's a lot of women that listen to the podcast and all of that. There's a lot of people that gain stuff from it, even though the tone that I use is specifically talking to other Black men. Other people can gather and garner information or garner insight from what's being talked about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can, now that I've listened to your stuff and I've gotten into it, I can, I'm a white guy and I benefit from reading and taking in your content. So that's the proof, right? But
awesome.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate you connecting with me. We're definitely gonna get on some stuff in the future because I love what you're doing.
Awesome. Hey, same here, my man. Anything I can ever do for you and the No Deadbeat Society or whatever, y'all don't hesitate to reach out and let me know, man. I'm always down.
For sure, man. I appreciate this. Thanks, brother.
No doubt, my man. Take care.
All right, next up, let's get right into Steve and I having our discussion. We covered a variety of different topics this episode, and there's some really good stuff in there. Let's just get right into that podcast.
Oh yeah.
Here we go. How you doing, man? How's life been?
Man, I'm good. I broke my foot over the last week or so. Didn't let it slow me down though, man. I'm good.
How did you break your foot again?
Man, I was getting my wheelchair out of my car, and I was using a loaner chair because my regular wheelchair broke, and it was sliding out of the car. I went to catch it, and I stepped on some ice, went down right on the foot.
Oh shit! You guys, you got some snow down there now, or?
Oh yeah, we got a solid 5.5, 6 inches.
Oh wow, wow. I
Yeah.
guess it's that storm that's all in the news. I guess I
Oh
keep
yeah.
hearing. We got nothing. I'm in Canada. We're way up north, and we got nothing right now. This time last year we had a snowstorm. It was brutal, but today we got blue skies and it's cold, 4 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that converts to, but yeah, no
Yeah.
snow, which
Yeah, man. It's 2,000 mile long storm. I mean, those in the U.S. or even, I'm sure even Texas and Louisiana, places that aren't used to it, they all got snow, and it's been crazy, man.
oh, that's crazy. No, I mean we got fires in California in December. Have you seen those videos that are out there?
It
That
looks like hell on earth, man. Oh,
yeah,
that's rough.
looks like it's an apocalypse or something. It looks like a video game or a
It
movie.
does. It
Yeah,
does, man. It reminds me of that movie 2012 where like that volcano goes off, and California just goes up in flames and starts falling into the ocean, man. That's
yeah,
scary stuff.
yeah. It's crazy. It's great. I was listening to the Joey Coco Diaz podcast, and he records it down. He's in LA somewhere, and they were talking about how they're shutting down highways, I mean, I was down there. I was in LA I think October, and I couldn't imagine, like, the traffic is insane there. I couldn't imagine what would happen if they shut down a highway. It's brutal.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like anything I want to be anywhere near, man. I feel for him
Yeah,
though, man. Keep him in my
yeah,
prayers nightly, man. I mean, that's a tough situation. I mean, knowing that you're leaving because of a fire and you may come home to nothing is a scary thought, which I've been through before
yeah.
myself with Hurricane Katrina. It's a scary thing.
Oh, you got hit down there by that?
Yeah, man. I lived in southern Alabama. I was right on the Gulf, and yeah, man, we had 4 feet of water and tornadoes, and it was rough. It was rough. So I have an idea of that kind of mindset of there might not be anything left. It's rough. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. That's crazy. All right, well, let's jump into our agenda. Though some things we wanted to talk about today. Um, you want to why don't you jump into doing a little bit of promo
Yeah.
for us?
Yeah, so as those that have been listening to the show know, we are on iTunes and Google Play Podcasts. You can find us there and on our website at wearebettermen.com. But now you have another way to find us. You can find us on YouTube, and this is going to be a little different than just the regular podcast setup. You're going to have the full episodes there, but if you're jumping into an episode just to hear a certain interview, you can now catch just the interviews on YouTube, and you're going to be able to go and catch what you want to hear or just listen to the whole thing. If you may not be next to a phone, you can pull it up on your PC or whatever you're on and still check out the Better Men podcast and get your weekly dose of manhood.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's awesome. And I appreciate you taking the reins on that too, man. It's there's a lot of work that goes in. You don't think about it when you listen to podcasts, but there's a lot of work that goes into these things, and to put together a good show and set up all the tech stuff. There's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to it. This isn't my first rodeo. I got really blessed because you've taken the brunt of the work, and I'm starting to pick up some of that for you and help out. But yeah, you listen to a podcast, you think it's just a couple people talking on to a microphone, and then they just push it online. It's way more than that. It's a passion of it's a labor of love. It's a
Yep.
passion, and more likely than not, most of us aren't getting paid to do this. We do this out of passion, and I love seeing the outcome of it. We get a lot of listens, and a lot of people really digging the show, and that's what it's for me. It's all about getting our message out there, and it's a labor of love, and love where it's going.
Yep. Yeah. Same here, man. It's another voice. It's another outlet. It's another communication point to spread some good.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so definitely check us all out. We got Facebook and we have an Instagram account. We're not doing a lot on Instagram because, quite frankly, it's too much for a two-man show. But we are there, so you can follow us there on Instagram, and definitely like us on Facebook. Steve's, fortunately for me, he's active on our Facebook account, and there's a bunch of extra content you can catch there too of his stuff, which is awesome.
Definitely, yeah, and not just that, but even on Instagram, the Better Men Instagram isn't too hyped up. But if you follow myself on Instagram, or even Leland and No Deadbeat Society on there, you're gonna get just as much from it for sure. So find us on there, and get in touch with us. We like to interact with you guys and find out what's on your mind, and things like that. So find us.
Yeah, that's one of the most awesome things so far. I mean, we're only 3 episodes into this thing, so I can't imagine how amazing the journey's going to get. But the connections and like the discussion that's happening, like whether it's public and commenting on things, or it's behind the scenes, and the people that want to connect and learn more or get involved, or be featured on the show in the future and things like that, is just really cool. Like, I mean, a local football team up here tweeted our podcast this week, and it's just a lot of cool stuff happening with it, so it's awesome.
Oh yeah, definitely is. And we appreciate every bit of interaction we get on any form of social media, period. Just means the world to us, and it lets us know that you guys care and you guys are enjoying what we're doing. And at least for myself, and I'm sure for Leland as well, from the bottom of our hearts, we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now we're gonna jump into a subject that I, fortunately and unfortunately know quite a bit about. Steve, you actually threw this on our agenda, and I think it's a great topic, especially since, the movement of No Deadbeat Society is, it's growing every day. And so I was breaking down my numbers. Actually, I was looking at my data the other day, and I have about, whatever it's at, almost 40,000 followers across all the platforms, and I'd say about 90% are men, and then probably about 60% are single fathers who have some way been involved in family litigation in the family court system. So we thought we'd take some time over the next few episodes to do, have a little discussion about it, and share some knowledge we have or what we've heard and that kind of thing. And the first thing I wanted to bring up on this, because I'm gonna probably get into a bunch each episode, I just don't have enough time in one to give my full opinion on it, is that there's this thing out there, that there's this phrase that there's a bias in the family courts, and it's I have to choose my words carefully here, because I don't want to say that there's not a bias, because I'm sure that a lot of men have personally been affected by a bias in family court. But generally, in a lot of states and provinces, and federally here, that they are implementing a default custody, which means guardianship, which is 50-50. But the issue is that guardianship doesn't necessarily mean access. So you can have 50% guardian of your child, but still only see them every other weekend. And that's where I think a lot of the issues come for a lot of guys is, they go from seeing their kid every day when they get home, family litigation kicks in, and now it's every other weekend they're seeing their kid, and it's a tough thing to deal with, because it's a loss of power, not in terms of like you having power over your family, but something that you controlled in your life that you can't in any way turn around easily. And it's also something that you're insanely emotionally connected to, because it's your children. So I just wanted to kind of start this off by saying that the bias in family courts is it is trending to stop or to move away from, but there's men that still face it, and a lot of that's based on precedents and old legislation. You got in the 1950s and 60s, a family looked much different than it looks now. Where a father in the 50s or 60s, 70s even, a father would be the primary breadwinner in the house, working his 9 to 5, and the mom would stay at home with the kids, probably multiple. So if they got divorced, it would just make sense for the mom to have the house, continue raising the children, and the dad to provide the funds and see his kids every other weekend. The family, statistically, data proves that families are different now. Both parents are usually working. Kids are in daycare at much younger ages. It's just a much more complex situation now, and unfortunately, a lot of the legislation is old, and even if you have a a statute or a law that was enacted in the 80s, it can be out of date because the 80s were even very much different than 2017. So I
Absolutely.
think that and that's not to say that there's not a guy that hasn't gone up before a judge that just threw the book at him and really when he was just a good guy and it happened. I mean, people, the court system's people, judges are people, and there's good and bad people and great people who are great at their jobs and people who are shitty at their jobs in every factor of life. So it's just an unfortunate, crappy situation because it's so emotional, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I definitely have to agree with, with what you're saying, that this trend of bias in court is slowly falling away. Where I live in Indiana, and our state's always been considered a mother state. If there was a split up, the mom had primary custody or full and got to determine what the dad did and didn't get to do. And, a personal friend of mine of 15 years, he's gone through it with two of his four kids. And, the first child, it was a very stereotypical, mom's the mom, she gets the kid, she decides when you see him. And he'd go months without having access to his children. And, I got to watch him suffer through it and his heartbreak. And every time he had his kid, his daughter was always, I don't want to go back to mommy's. I want to stay here with you. And it was just a nightmare. And the second one was a lot of the same. And he went up to a younger judge, a judge who's a little more in tune with society, and, split it right down the middle, 50-50, but still his was an every other weekend situation. And finally, as of the last couple of years, that's a lot of that's, eased up. And, he gets his kids whenever he likes, with cooperation with the mom. And there's a lot of, they're not having to split up holidays. They can be, nice with each other and have, co-op holidays and things like that. And I love the fact that the bias is going away. And, there's good parents that don't get access, and there's really bad parents that get too much access to their kids. And, I think we're starting to see where the research and the time is being put in to get to know the parents and decide, as a group, what's going to be best for the kids. And cause I think for the longest time, it wasn't in the best interest of kids. It was in what was easiest for mom and dad. And I love the fact that kids are being taken into consideration. Their opinions are being heard, compared to what it used to be, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, and that's the pain point, right? Is that, 3 months or a few months without seeing your kid is devastating. It drives, it can't be denied. It drives men into depression. It drives men into suicide. Suicide is a male issue. Like it's women commit suicide and it's horrible, but the statistics prove that more men kill themselves than women. And a lot of them is because of custody disputes. Like it's out there and it's known because it's I couldn't imagine losing access to your kid or just the all the things that come with it sometimes. And it's kind of an interesting thing when you really think about it, because the world's changing, or at least society in the Western world is we're a lot looser, and I don't know if that's a good or a great thing or a not great thing. Is that people are having kids now without knowing people. There's a lot of internet dating going on, and quickly moving to intimacy, and that doesn't mean that the kids aren't a blessing, because a child is a blessing, I believe, no matter what.
Absolutely.
But when you don't really know the other person, you're probably headed for some tough times.
Definitely. I mean, you hook up with a chick you met on Facebook, 2 weeks after you've met her, you have no idea who she is, what her family is about, what her personal life is. You don't know if she's a great person, and, living a good life, or if she's just some crack addict or something, or abusive to other people, and, or even the guy the same way. You don't know if that guy is going to be there for the kid, if he's going to provide, if he even cares. And yeah, it's definitely a big change, and it's sad. And like you said, kids are blessings, and unfortunately these kids come into situations where it's so bad for them, sometimes even from both ways, that it just causes unnecessary pain and suffering, not just to the kid, but even to parents. And it's rough, man. I couldn't imagine being in that situation. I've been blessed not to have been, and I know you've been, and I think you've definitely come out on top with how you've handled it. And, kudos to you for sure, man.
Yeah, I think my without getting into too much detail, is my thing was
Right.
I had a really good group of women around me that care about me, like friends and family, and what my first thing when I entered the whole situation was I just started focusing on my mental health and making sure that I was becoming the best person I could be for my kid, and however that looked. But I mean, with No Debbie Society, I talk to guys, I'm coaching a few guys through the process, and it's not easy. Like, it's, you have men that are, I know guys covered in tattoos that riding bikes they're bawling at night. They're crying. These guys are breaking down and crying because they just don't like it, they don't get it, and they don't understand, and it's a pain that they've never felt before. But
Oh, yeah.
at the same time, there's a lot of douchebags out there that are having kids and piecing out, and it's those guys that are really helping create the problem. If you're a guy, I'm telling you right now, if you're a guy listening to this right now and you have pieced out on a kid, you need to fix that, because you are a part of the problem. There's a lot of other factors, but you are a serious part of that problem, and it's difficult and it's complex, and it's bold to make a statement like that, because sometimes sometimes it can feel like it's better for you to not be there with the conflict with the mom or whatever, but there's still ways you can support and just let that child know as they grow up that you're there when they need you. So it's a thing for men, man. I think that's one of the main things the reasons I created the movement or the brand was because guys it's in us to do it. Like, we want to be good fathers, especially
Oh,
if
yeah.
we had shitty fathers. We want to be great fathers, but we just sometimes don't have the means to figure out how to do it. And a lot of that is connecting internally and figuring out who you really are, and things like that, right? But yeah, it's a tough situation, and I think both Steve and I anybody listening that's going through it, we got nothing but support for you, and we're, even personally, if you need to connect with us and talk, we're here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, you're coaching people through it. I'm a life coach, and, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get involved in this. Like you said, was to, create a way for guys to find that support. And, Leland and he's been through this a lot. I'm a dad, he's a dad. And I've been witness through friends and family going through things like this. And yeah, like you said, reach out to us. We have no issues talking to you as much as you need. And, we'll be there to help out with whatever we can. So feel free to reach out to us for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think that we'll call that part one, family legislation or family court. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
we'll jump. There's so much more we can talk about, because
Oh man, that could go for days, man. I'm
yeah,
telling you, that's a big
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So let's jump into the next item on the list, which is me talking about how I used to be a wannabe Fat Joe.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm curious about this because I mean, and not trying to be stereotypical, but you have this look. You have this look like you could have been up there, with Fat Joe and all them, and and dropping, dropping lines and all that shit. So I'm curious, man. I want to hear about this. I
yeah,
want to
all
know.
right. So when I was like 19, I was making mad beats in my basement, my parents' basement. No, I was into hip hop. I loved hip hop. I got into it probably because of a lot of mainstream music in the '90s, and that was like Eminem, and I was a big Fugees fan and Wyclef. I think Wyclef Jean's Carnival CD was the first hip hop CD I ever bought. But anyways, I started getting into hip hop, and I sucked. Like, I was terrible. I was just rapping in my basement on a computer recording, and for a couple years, and then slowly I started getting better, and I started making music, and then eventually put out a CD locally up here in Vancouver. And the thing about me is it's kind of funny. I look at my life like I'm never super great at anything, but I'm one of the hardest workers you'll ever meet. So I might not be the best rapper. I might not be the best web developer. I might not be the best podcast host, but I work hard, and when it's something I'm passionate about, I work hard at it. So that's exactly what I did. I started booking shows for myself, and all of a sudden I became here in Vancouver in like 2005, 2004. I became like the primary guy that was booking hip hop shows in Vancouver for about 3 or 4 years, and rapping on the side. I was in a group. It's gonna get funny when I get to the reason I quit here, but I was making music. I was, guys were connecting with me all over the world who were hearing it online. And back then, I mean, we had like MySpace, and it wasn't even I don't even think we used it much. So people were hearing your music because hip hop heads were talking about it, like on crazy internet forums and stuff like that. Not like Facebook. Facebook was just coming into the picture, but I think at that point it was still just for university students. So anyways, I was making music and I was connecting, and I started working with this guy up here. His name's Mocha Only, and he was from a pretty famous group called the Swollen Members here in Vancouver. They're still making music. I think they went platinum, and they're pretty big here. And I was doing a bunch of music and touring with Mocha, and then I started a group, and we got a distribution deal in Asia.
Nice.
And this was back when mobile phones were like the thing, but they were just coming out. And then I got signed to this independent label in Austria called Boombox Records. I mean, you say you got signed, and it's not really a sign. They're just a bunch of guys like you, but they put out your record for you and help you and book tours and stuff. So
distributors.
Exactly. So, but the great thing was they paid me and my group, which was a couple other guys from here, to come out and tour Austria and Germany. And, it was all paid for, and I got to go to Europe. I probably would never went otherwise. So I went and did that. The whole time I had started this record label here in Vancouver called Up in Your Basement Records. And I was helping a lot of local guys put out their CDs and book shows. Like I was booking, I think I booked like 200 or 300 shows over the course of 5 years. It was insane. There was nights when I had like 2 shows in Vancouver on opposite sides of town, like on the same night. It was just nuts. I was going crazy. I was partying hard. It was just, it was a crazy time for me. And then, so that I'm doing music. It was all out there. Then I quit in the matter of like a month. And just when my music started getting good, we got booked to do this ski resort up here, me and my group. And they paid us like it was great. I think it was like $2,000 cash plus ski passes for the whole group. Fancy hotel rooms. We were just about to, I felt like we were just about to make the brink over and maybe like get some, like we were talking music video grants and all that kind of stuff. So as we go up to this ski resort, and it was like a hockey tournament or something that was on there, and we're on stage. I'm dancing around, rapping my raps, and getting all hardcore with it. And then this shit-faced guy walks over to the stage. He's like, hey man, can you play some AC/DC? And I was like, dude, I'm performing here, man. And that was it. After that, I quit. I was like, fuck it, I'm done.
Wow.
And looking back,
that's crazy.
That was it. It was just like after all that work, that was it for me. I was just like, this is great, and it's fun, but the reality is it's tough, and I don't really know if I want to spend that much effort working on something this hard. But yeah, that was it.
Yeah, man, you gotta live life, right? That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's it. So that's it, man. I'll I'm sure more will come out later as we continue this, but that was my hip hop career from 2002 to 2008 is when I quit.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, the fact that you got to travel overseas and all that, I mean, even if it didn't stick, man, I mean, those are memories that, that I would cherish the hell out of, man. That's
good
stuff.
It was awesome. One of the bars we played in Lynn's, we slept like up in this attic above the bar. They had like some beds, and Kurt Cobain slept on the same bed like 15 years before. Like it was his first gig in Austria when they went over there. And like there was just like a whole bunch of little bizarre things like that happened. And yeah, no, it was an experience I definitely don't regret. I'm glad that I stopped. I mean, hip hop music is a passion of mine, and
Can't hear you.
You hear me now?
Gotcha. There you are.
All right. This is a rough one today. Got
Yeah,
kids
man.
yelling, microphones dying.
Hey, anyone that says this stuff is easy hasn't
Yeah,
tried it. So,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's brings me back. Let's move on from that. Maybe you wanna
yes.
roll with the next one?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, I'm in a wheelchair. That's what I do. I roll. That's what I do, man. All right. So, all right. So, yeah, we're going to roll into the next one here. And um, this is actually a pretty good segue. So, we're going to discuss a little bit how the most difficult times can bring the best out of people and bring you closer to your real truth.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's deep, man. That's deep. It takes you back for a second.
All right. No,
And
apologies, man. I was just reading. I was going through the agenda, and I was actually about to type something into the next show's one. I should probably not try to multitask like that.
no, that's cool, man. No, so yeah, brings us to our, to our real truth, and I tell you what, man, I am the biggest advocate for not letting hard times and difficult times, bring you down, but taking them as a learning experience. I'm a big advocate for eating as much shit as you can, because you're going to come out on top if you approach it right and you respond properly to it. Um, as we covered in my, in our first show, I was dealt a shit hand from birth. I was injured at birth. I have crutches, wheelchair. I couldn't do all the things the other kids did, and had all these problems and troubles in life. And I could have approached it one of two ways. I could have taken it as, this is a bad thing, and I'm gonna just, at some point I'm just gonna end it all and leave it on the, just leave it on the table and do nothing with it, or I can take these experiences and turn them into something that's going to help people. And this brought me to a realization that losing is a good thing. Having a bad situation is a good thing, and it really pushes you to become a better man and become a better person overall, and really make waves with things that should just crash down on you and crush you, but instead turn them into a positive thing and a light that gets people out of their difficult times. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, man. I've found that tough times is. I mean, first I should actually should say, Steve, is that's one of the main reasons I wanted to connect with you and work on this. Is you just ooze of positivity, man. Like it's like you look at every aspect of everything as an opportunity to do good or work hard and make something good out of it. So kudos to you for all that, man, because it's not easy to live like that. Like it's very easy for us to get negative and pessimistic, especially over hard times.
Yeah, it can be. And it's the way I look at things, man, is every situation has a silver lining, and that silver lining still may be shit. It may be a really, really terrible silver lining, but it's a silver lining. You hear all the time, and I'm not taking anything from anyone. I don't want this to be taken negatively, but you hear about people all the time. I was injured at birth. I had a bad car accident, or I was molested, or I was beaten, and all these things suck. And I don't want any of these to happen to anybody ever. But you can take these situations and you can let them do one of two things to you. You can let them crush you to the ground and dominate who you are as a person, and really just that can be the light that reflects off you and just be a negative all the time. Or you can take these things that have just been awful and would crush anyone else and turn them into something that helps. If you've had one of those things I just mentioned, use that as a way to reach out to people who need support going through the same thing, or who are, dealing with somebody who went through the same thing, and you can learn to take your experiences into a teachable lesson. And yeah, there's just, in my opinion, there's no reason not to be positive, no matter what the situation, even the worst situation, you can be positive about it.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard, and I'll be the first to say that I find myself, getting beating myself up over negative things still, but it's definitely a priority to work on. And you have a better day, you have a better week, you have a better year when you look at everything that's tough and all the adversity you have to go through as an opportunity to further your journey into doing something better. And you're right. Sometimes negative things happen over and over and over, and that mountain just keeps getting steeper and steeper and steeper. But I really do think that it peaks, and then you have a great time. Something great happens, and then maybe you have to go down the valley, and you're going back up again. But it's like these things that you have to work hard at getting through, build who you are. You know, the at the point when you feel like you're at success, which is however success is for you, whatever success looks like, it took everything you went through and all the mountains to make you get to that point and build and who you are at that point.
Oh yeah, and this is a metaphor I use when I'm talking to people that I'm coaching, or like I'm doing a talk here in a couple of days, and one of the metaphors I use is look at the most beautiful buildings around the world, ancient or new, and how beautiful these things are, these places are, and you got to realize how much awful bad things had to go into, or uncomfortable things had to go into building that thing. You had construction guys who were getting hurt and killed. You had to you had to mess with mud and concrete, and you had to weld, and you had to sleepless nights, and you had to somebody had to spend hours and hours and hours designing this thing, and then all these people had to go into building it up, and then once it's done, nobody can get enough of it. Everybody's attracted to it. It's like a light to a fly. Everybody's got to go to it. But you got to remember, all that crap that it took to get to that point is the stuff that we have going on in life. And if you want to be that skyscraper that attracts all of the good things in the world, you got to start with all that shit at the bottom that builds up to it.
Yep. That's exactly it, man. I think this is a really good segment to end this episode with.
Absolutely.
I think that was really powerful. But before we do that, I need to ask you about something. And that is 47 minutes ago on Facebook, you posted in a big pink box, "Poop in my pants." What, did you shit yourself, man?
No, man, no. My wife and I, we are pranksters, and that's one of the ways we get. That's one of the ways we stay happy, man. Is we have rough days. She works with little kids all day. I work with some of the most irritating people in the world in the wireless industry, and we come home and we just mess with each other and get each other to laugh. And I was all my family was coming over, and I was getting a little stressed, so she grabbed my phone from me and she typed something on it and threw it back down and walked out of the room, and I didn't think anything of it. But sure enough, one of my best friends commented on it. He said, "You should probably go change those." And I'm just like, oh, come on. So yeah, man, that's just something we do to each other all the time, man. It's a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's love, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, brother. It's been a good one.
Absolutely.
We had a couple glitches in this one, mostly according to my setup over here, but I'll get those ironed out. But great talk as always, and I think we're going to do one even sooner here for the holidays. So
yeah, man, we're gonna knock one out for the holiday season, nice, quick, and to the point, and get ready to have some really, really much needed close family time, and get ready for a kick-ass 2018.
Yes, sir. All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Yes, sir.
All right. Next up is an interview with Nicole J Soleil, who is an author and a brilliant human being who's written a book called Fade Out of Sadness. She's got a great story, great personality, and there's a lot of depth to this thing. So we had a great chat. Let's get right into that.
Thing is happening here, so I'm slightly proud of our city.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're coming back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's worthy of a good comeback for sure.
Absolutely.
Let's jump right into it.
Okay.
I'll chop it all up, but can maybe you just start and talk a little bit about you and what you do and why you do it?
Absolutely. My name is Nicole J Soleil. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. So I currently work at one of the top 3 automotive companies. I am actually an executive communication specialist in my day job. And I graduated from Bowling Green State University as a journalism major, broadcast journalism major. And it was really there that I kind of developed my skill for writing. I've always had a passion for English and literature from, a young age. And it was post-college when, you're trying to find jobs and, you're in between that 18 and 25 age where you really don't know what you quite want to do. So I started writing again. I started writing poems. I started writing short stories. And in 2012, I actually had an idea for a novel. And so I was going, 4 or 5 years in this novel. And I actually had a friend that passed away last year due to suicide. And it prompted me to go back to my experience when I was depressed. And I said, you know what? I don't want any of my friends to ever feel like they can't talk to someone or talk to me, if they're reaching a low point in life or if something is just, eating at their soul that they have someone to talk to. So Fade Out of Sadness, which is the book that I currently publish, that's how it pretty much birthed last year. So I spent a year working on it, and it took me back to those days in college where, I had a weird feeling and I didn't know quite why I was feeling this way. And I reached out to the counseling center, and I had the next 8 years, even though I had relapses of depression, it was very much a self-discovery journey. And so now I am very much dedicated to raising awareness for mental health, across the world, and also, developing my writing career as an author. So that's a short version.
It's awesome. I have checked out all your work, and the books will be on order soon, so I'm looking forward to that read.
Thank you.
Primarily, our audience, like you've seen, is generally guys, just kind of because of the nature of our brand. I coach a lot of guys through some pretty difficult times and things like that, and mental health definitely comes up, and one of the first things, especially when you get into subjects like divorce or just points in life where everything seems to be crumbling. It might not be family related, it could be losing a job or whatever. There's a lot of stigmas around mental health, and I don't know, I couldn't say that it's more applicable to men than women, because I think each has their own way of having to deal with that crap. But do you think what are your thoughts on men's mental health and awareness around that? And do you see it's trending as it's something that society is getting better at handling? Or
I think that we're starting to recognize that men also go through depression. Sometimes when we think about, depression, we think about maybe like postpartum and, women are more emotional than men. So it becomes this thing where, majority of women tend to have symptoms of depression more than men. And that's just based on, I believe, what we notice as a society. And my experience, dealing with my boyfriend and, just men in my family is that men are also very vulnerable. They're human beings. They have all the rights to, feel sad, feel happy, go through the emotions of life. And I think that as a society, we try to make men very strong and barbaric and, I can't share my feelings, when we're all human, and I think that if we as a society start recognizing men in a slightly different light, based on, what we see them as, this, strong figure, if we just look at them as humans, we will understand that they go through a lot of changes, a lot of different changes and different emotions throughout life, just like women. And it's just not talked about. And I love when men do talk about it, because it lets you know that, if you have a circle of friends and it's like, hey man, I'm having a rough time, you always see guys, they'll pick their guy up, you know, and they'll take him out to the bar, or they'll take him out, you know, they'll invite him over to the house and watch the game, and they have those conversations within themselves. But as soon as they step outside, you know, they kind of have to put on that front.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it's okay for men to go to therapy. It's okay for men to, you know, stand up for what they believe in. If you know, it's suicide and depression, these things are so real, and they can happen to anyone. And majority of the time, most people experience depression throughout their lifetime. They just may not call it that, or they may not even know that they are going through it. I've created Fade Out of Sadness for everyone, for both men and women, and I didn't want it to be so heavily focused because it was, you know, written by a woman. I didn't want it to be so focused on, you know, a woman's experience. I opened it up to everyone. So while I give examples of, you know, my own life, you know, I've had plenty of, you know, my male friends, you know, text me and call me like, oh my God, I completely related to, you know, what you said in, you know, chapter such and such. When I looked through your profile, I said, oh man, like this is so cool that men are, you know, entering the conversation. Because if you look at the stats, it almost always talks about women. You know, women are more susceptible to depression than men. And I personally think that we need more men to speak up and talk about it. I encourage my male friends to seek out therapy if they're going through something, you know, because sometimes they don't want to be seen as weak. Yeah. And it's nothing to be seen as weak as, you know, in my opinion. I am an advocate for any and everyone to seek out therapy if you need it, or seek out those happy moments. And, you know, I mean, make yourself happy. So I'm a huge supporter.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that you know, what I've learned is those stats are kind of they're skewed because a lot of men don't report and they're undiagnosed. Mm-hmm. They don't go to their doctors, and you know, I was like that. You know, like before my son came into the world, therapy was for weak people. And now I have a therapist, and I pay my bill every month so that I can talk to her, and I think I'll probably pay her for the rest of my life because it's an amazing journey, right? So to wrap this up, let's what is a couple really big things or that you think someone would take away from reading your book? Like why we're going to promote your book because I love what you're doing and it's all amazing work. But like what's looking at our audience, what's a guy going to get? So he buys your book, he reads it. How's it going to help him?
I think that men in general, could definitely read this book and get a high-level overview of inspiration. And I say that because the book starts at a very low point. And so it's like, hey, this is what I went through. This is how I felt. You know, I felt confused and you know, unclear. And, you know, my life was just kind of a whirlwind of emotion. And it literally takes you through 8 steps to help yourself heal and help yourself overcome. We start with deep breaths, like the importance of actually taking a deep breath. And if you feel that you're about to get angry, or if someone makes you upset, before anything comes out of your mouth, before you make any type of action, you want to take a deep breath, because that could very much save you from harming yourself or harming, you know, a loved one or anyone else. And so we start with just acknowledging the fact that you have an emotion, you feel something. So what are you going to do about it? And from there, the book describes, you know, social media as a huge influencer, you know, in our everyday lives now. And so it talks about, you know, staying away from that and really focusing your energy on yourself. We talk about letting things go. You know, Yoda is, I just started watching Star Wars a few years ago for the first time. Nice. And one of the quotes that really stood out to me was Yoda said, you know, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. And so you have to let those things go that are hindering you. And I think everyone can relate to that. You know, we talk about goals and just being, you know, 100% of yourself all the time and always doing your best. And I think that anyone that reads this book is going to be inspired to seek inward and really start to focus on how they can make their lives happier or create the life that they've always wanted to live, and really let go of the anger, of the dissatisfaction, you know, of the uncertainty. And like I said, really take a look at, okay, what why do I feel this way, and how can I, get over it? What is my future looking like? And my hope with this book was always that people would have a guide from, a real person that, is not afraid to share her experiences, but really tailor the tips that I give you to your own experience. And I made sure, throughout my research that it wasn't biased, but it was very much backed up on our personal journey and our own hero's journey and, what we go through every day and the changes that the small changes that we can make every day, such as one of the examples I give is like writing a list of like 20 to 50 things that make you happy. And I mean, it could be like mimosas or beer or licking your fingers after eating Doritos. The little moments, those little moments that you may find relief in something that could honestly really change you. And so I think that men, women, children, and even, older folks, that they could look at this book and just say, have an aha moment. Like, you know what? I can do this. I can push forward, and I am able to overcome my depression and sadness.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to sharing.
All right. So the last discussion I'm gonna throw in here was kind of something that ad hoc happened this week. I'm connected with a local guy named Corey Coombs, and he posted something on Facebook that caught my eye, and he did something. But I'm gonna let him talk about it, and it's just an interesting conversation. It's funny how over time as men we change. When we grow from boys to men, we look at things differently, and we have a different perspective on things like safety and that kind of thing. So let's jump into that right now.
Do something with it, right?
Yeah.
So do you still got a few minutes or?
Yeah.
Okay, man. I just want to get you to walk me through what went down.
Well, I just left my buddy's place. I was out there welding for him. And I went into town on my way home, and I thought I'd just shoot by Dairy Queen and grab a milkshake for the drive home, right? And so I'm sitting there, and I hear tires lock up, and then a big smash, right? I'm like, oh, geez, someone just wiped out on the highway. And so I pull out of the Dairy Queen drive-through, and I pull up to these two cars pulled over on the side of the road. And first thing I noticed was the car that got hit. There was a couple of elderly people inside, so I'm like, oh, I better make sure they're okay. So I ran over to their car, and I'm like, oh, everyone okay? Right? Like, airbags didn't deploy or anything. Turned out it wasn't major at all.
Yeah.
But so I'm talking to them, and the guy in the other vehicle comes up, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. I'll pay for any damages. I'll pay cash. He's like, I got money, and he just started acting kind of shady about it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, dude. Like ICBC, it's pretty simple, straightforward. And he's like, oh, no ICBC. I don't want to go through ICBC. And I'm like, well, you got a brand new vehicle, and they've got a Honda here, so it's just pretty straightforward. You just call up ICBC and let them know what happened and pay a little extra money, and the problem goes away. And he started getting like super nervous and just acting strange, and kept trying to shake everybody's hand and kept saying that he had money. And so I told him, well, you guys better exchange your insurance information and take pictures of what happened. And so, that kind of made him a little bit more nervous. And as I walked by his vehicle, I saw what I'm pretty sure was a 12-pack of Twisted Teas down on the floor, right? So I'm like, oh, no. So I go to the old lady, and I'm like, are you sure you're okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine, just a little shaken up. And I turned around, and the guy is like right behind me. And I'm like, how about you? Are you okay? And I leaned in closer.
Yeah.
Just to see if, and all I could smell was booze, right? I'm like, oh, no.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, I looked at him, and I'm like, I gotta go. And so I hopped in my truck, and so I tried calling the non-emergency number, and I just sat there on hold for like 10 minutes. So I was like, oh, well, this isn't working out. I don't want this guy driving because he's obviously drunk.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, man, like, so I called 911, and I didn't really want to because I don't want to tie up emergency services over something kind of not so pending, right?
Yeah, except that
But
the guy was drunk, and I get it because the next he could have fucking went and hit a kid next or something, right?
well, yeah, and I mean the highway was just jam-packed with traffic, right? Everyone heading home after the workday.
Yeah.
So I call up the dispatch, and I'm talking to the officer, and I give the officer the description of the guy. He's about 5'6", stocky build, probably around the 220-pound mark. And steel toe boots, blue jeans, black hoodie, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh well, get his license plate number. So I backed my truck right up beside him, and I'm like leaning out the window on the phone with the cops, and he sees me, and I read out the license plate number. Next thing you know, he hops in his vehicle and peels out down onto the highway, and I'm going, oh shoot, this ain't good,
Yeah.
because I didn't want him to leave, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like on the dispatch, and I'm like, he just left. He just took off down the highway, and the female officer's like, follow him, just follow him. So
Oh, really?
yeah, and I'm like, all right, and just so you know, like I'm using Bluetooth hands free. I'm not talking on the phone while driving, right? And she's like,
Yeah.
oh, don't even worry about it. Just tail him as long as you can. And so I followed him up the Island Highway to just about Ladysmith,
Oh, shit.
and I was on the phone with him, and they're like, make sure he doesn't turn off, keep your distance, and blah blah blah. And so eventually they said they were setting up a roadblock for him. So I was like, oh, okay, well they got this. So, and I didn't really feel like driving all the way up Island, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I turned off the highway and I started heading home. And then about, I don't know, 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from, I can't remember the officer's name. But he was like, oh, thank you so much for, calling this in and doing the right thing. And I said, hey, it's not about doing the right thing. It's about doing your due diligence, right? Like,
Yeah.
the cops in Duncan were so tied up, they couldn't even send an officer out. So, I mean, what am I going to do? I didn't want the guy to drive down the highway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, right? I mean, there's his safety, but there's also everyone else's, and it's really
Right?
like, why even doing that, right? Like, there's no need to be
Like,
doing that.
if I wasn't alone, like if I had one of my friends with me or something like that, would have walked up and taken his keys, right? And just chucked him on the highway.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this guy was acting super shady, right? I'm there by myself, and I'm like, God. This is I grew up in Duncan, right? And it can be a pretty rough town, so you kind of pick and
yeah,
choose your battles, right?
yeah. I remember being there like well, it must have been like 12, 13 years ago, and they were calling it Drunken Duncan, and we I partied there. It's a Duncan's a rough little community.
Oh, dude, it has evolved into even a it's worse now.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy, man. I know. I just wanted to get you to kind of walk through it for me because like anytime a guy does something like that, it's like I think we need to talk about it just because it's like when we're younger, everyone's like, oh fuck the police, you don't need to call the police and shit. But as you get older, you realize these are just things you need to do, right?
Yeah, and you know what? You know what was running through my head the whole time was like, oh, don't be a snitch and stuff like that, right? And
Yeah,
how many times have I gone out and I had a couple
yeah,
drinks and drove home, right? And I'm
yeah,
like, oh. But in this instance, like he caused an accident. He's like noticeably intoxicated.
yeah,
And I'm like, no, I got to do my due diligence here about this. I can't let this go.
yeah,
And yeah, but
yeah.
with the
No, for sure, it was the right thing for sure. I think, like, yeah, yeah. Had he had not caused an accident and not been a fucking dick about it in general, it probably could have gone another way. But I
well,
mean,
you know what? If he didn't cause an accident, no one would have known, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in this case too, it was super minor accident, right? Like the Honda needs a new rear bumper, fender, tail light, and a trunk, maybe a few other things, right? So it's looking at a couple grand in the paint shop.
Yeah.
And his vehicle was like a brand new Dodge Journey, and you could barely even tell that he wiped out a little Honda with it. But
Yeah. Well, I mean that's quite a bit of damage to the Honda, though. I mean that'd be a bill for them for sure, right? They got to pay their deductible at the minimal.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
if ICBC deems that that they weren't like 50-50 responsible or
Oh
something.
no, it was the drunk guy rear-ended him.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know, I was kind of thinking maybe he had like one of the drinks in his hand when he wiped it out and he spilt it on him, because when I leaned
Yeah.
in close to give him the old smell check, I was like, holy, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
but with the phone call that I got when I was on my way home after it, with the officer thanking me, he said that they had set up a roadblock and that they had caught him and that he was being charged with drinking and driving, and uh, might be getting like leaving at a scene of an accident, because when he realized that I was on the phone reading out his license plate, he took off down the highway, right?
Oh, like before he was even finished fully talking to the people or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Not a good guy basically. Probably
no,
probably in a shitty spot, but not a good guy for sure. You
no,
got to think
and
about it. Could have been your grandparents or something. Could have been our grandparents, right?
well, it could have been, yeah, right. Like it could have been someone with their kid in the car, right? Like I've always taken driving quite seriously, because man, one fuck up and you can just ruin somebody's life forever.
Yeah, for sure.
Something so simple that we do every day, even though it becomes mundane, and with all the distractions and stuff while you're at the wheel, like now that I'm getting older, it's the whole like drinking and driving thing is just not cool, right? Like,
Yeah, no, I fully agree. When we're young and dumb, we do it all and we don't think about it, right? But it's guys
yeah,
that like we need the guys out there that are keeping us in check, just like you did. Just because that if you would have got away with it, you would have done it. You would have did it again. And if you did it again, maybe just like you said, you would have made a difference.
So that about does it for episode 003 of the We Are Better Men podcast. Remember, you can check us out at wearebettermen.com. We're on all the major podcast distribution networks now: iTunes, Google Play, every other site and app you can think of, so you can find us there. I threw that conversation with Corey in just because I think both Steve and I agree that when we see if guys in our networks are doing things and talking about things and doing good things and the right thing, we're going to talk about it. And there's probably a lot of opinions on that conversation and what went down, and how he went about it. But at the end of the day, when the right thing is done and a good decision is made, we got to talk about it. We got to share that, because we're all going to face situations, and we're gonna there's a fork, and we got to decide what we're going to do. So that's it for this episode. We'll catch y'all soon.